What if you could control your emotions instead of letting them control you? It's a question that has echoed through the ages, and one that Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, once grappled with. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches us how to master our emotions, not by suppressing them, but by understanding and redirecting them. Emotions can feel like unpredictable storms, tossing us around without warning. But what if I told you that Stoicism offers a set of tools, 40 strategies to be exact, that can help you navigate these storms with clarity and calm? This isn't about becoming emotionless or cold. It's about building resilience, finding balance, and taking charge of how you respond to life's challenges. In this video, we'll explore these 40 Stoic strategies, diving into practical, actionable insights that you can start using today. Whether you're dealing with anger, anxiety, or even overwhelming joy, these principles will help you stay grounded and in control. By the end, you'll walk away with a deeper understanding of how to harness the power of your mind, just as Marcus Aurelius did, and transform the way you experience emotions. So let's begin this journey together, because mastering your emotions isn't just possible, it's within your reach. Not everything is within your control, but your response always is. This is the heart of the first Stoic strategy, the Dichotomy of Control. It's a simple but transformative idea that divides the world into two categories: things we can influence and things we cannot. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most influential teachers, put it this way: "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, desires, and actions. Outside our power are things like reputation, wealth, and even the weather." Think about it. How often do we waste energy fretting over things we can't change? Take something as mundane as traffic. You're stuck in a jam, late for an important meeting. The cars aren't moving, the clock is ticking, and frustration starts to bubble up. But here's the question: does honking your horn or cursing at the driver in front of you actually change anything? Probably not. What you can control, however, is how you respond. You can choose to stay calm, use the time to listen to a podcast, or even practice a few deep breaths. The traffic is out of your hands, but your reaction isn't. Now, reflect on a recent moment in your life where you felt powerless. Maybe it was a work deadline you couldn't meet because of someone else's delay, or a plan that fell apart due to circumstances beyond your control. How did you respond? Did you let frustration take over, or did you find a way to adapt? The dichotomy of control invites us to reframe these moments. Instead of focusing on what we can't change, we shift our attention to what we can: our thoughts, our actions, and our mindset. This principle isn't about ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. It's about reclaiming your power where it truly lies. When you master this strategy, you stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable and start investing it in what truly matters: your inner world. And that's where real change begins. What's the worst that could happen? It's a question that might make you uncomfortable at first, but in Stoicism, it's a cornerstone of emotional resilience. This is the essence of the second strategy, Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils. It's not about pessimism or dwelling on the negative, it's about preparation. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, put it this way: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. By envisioning the worst-case scenario, we strip it of its power to surprise us." Let's break it down. Imagine you're about to have a difficult conversation with a colleague. Maybe you need to address a conflict or deliver feedback you know won't be well received. Your heart races, your mind spins with what-ifs, and anxiety starts to creep in. What if they get defensive? What if the conversation goes sideways? Here's where Premeditatio Malorum comes in. Instead of avoiding those thoughts, lean into them. Picture the worst possible outcome. Maybe they storm out of the room, or the discussion turns into an argument. Now ask yourself, could you handle that? Chances are the answer is yes. And by mentally rehearsing this scenario, you've already taken away its ability to shock or overwhelm you. This practice isn't about expecting the worst to happen. It's about being ready for anything. Think of it like carrying an umbrella on a cloudy day. You don't expect it to rain, but if it does, you're prepared. The same goes for life's challenges. When you've already imagined the obstacles, you're not caught off guard. Instead, you're equipped to respond with clarity and calm. Take a moment to reflect on a challenge you're anticipating. Maybe it's a big presentation, a tough decision, or even a personal goal you're nervous about pursuing. What's the worst-case scenario? How would you handle it? By visualizing it now, you're not only reducing its emotional weight, but also building confidence in your ability to navigate it. Premeditatio Malorum isn't about living in fear, it's about living with intention. It's a tool to help you face life's uncertainties with courage and composure. And when you do, you'll find that the worst rarely happens, but even if it does, you're ready. Your thoughts shape your emotions. It's a powerful truth, and one that the Stoics understood deeply. This is the foundation of the third strategy, cognitive reframing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, the way you perceive a situation determines how you feel about it. If you can change your perspective, you can change your emotional response. Let's say you've just received critical feedback on a project. Your first reaction might be frustration or even self-doubt. But what if, instead of seeing it as a failure, you reframed it as an opportunity to grow? Cognitive reframing invites you to step back and ask, what can I learn from this? How can this make me better? Suddenly, the feedback isn't a blow to your confidence, it's a stepping stone toward improvement. Here's another example. Imagine you're stuck in a long line at the grocery store. You could let impatience take over, or you could reframe the situation. Maybe this delay gives you a moment to pause, to breathe, or even to strike up a conversation with someone nearby. The situation hasn't changed, but your perspective has, and with it, your emotional state. The beauty of cognitive reframing is that it puts you back in the driver's seat. Instead of being at the mercy of circumstances, you decide how to interpret them. This isn't about ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing a perspective that empowers you rather than drains you. Take a moment to think about a recent situation where you felt stuck or upset. What thoughts were running through your mind? Could you reframe them in a way that shifts your emotional response? Maybe a setback at work becomes a chance to develop new skills, or a disagreement with a friend becomes an opportunity to strengthen your communication. Cognitive reframing is a tool for resilience, a way to transform challenges into opportunities, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you'll find that your emotions no longer control you. You control them simply by changing the way you think. What are you grateful for today? It's a question that might seem simple, but it holds immense power. For the Stoics, gratitude wasn't just a feel-good practice, it was a tool for building emotional resilience and shifting focus away from what we lack toward what we already have. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." Gratitude, in this sense, is a way of anchoring ourselves in the present, reminding us of the abundance that surrounds us, even in challenging times. Think about the last time you felt frustrated or overwhelmed. Maybe it was a tough day at work or a moment when life felt chaotic. Now consider this: what small, everyday things could you still be grateful for in that moment? A warm cup of coffee, a kind word from a friend, or even the simple fact that you have a roof over your head. Gratitude doesn't require grand gestures or life-changing events. It's about noticing the little things, the moments we often take for granted, and letting them remind us of the good that exists alongside the struggle. Here's an example. Imagine you're stuck at home on a rainy day, feeling restless and unproductive. Instead of focusing on what you can't do, try shifting your perspective. What if you took a moment to appreciate the sound of the rain against the window, the coziness of your favorite sweater, or the chance to slow down and recharge? These small acts of gratitude can transform a mundane or even frustrating moment into something meaningful. Now, take a moment to reflect. What 3 things are you grateful for right now? It could be something as simple as a good meal, a supportive relationship, or even the chance to learn and grow through challenges. By actively practicing gratitude, you're not just acknowledging the good in your life, you're training your mind to focus on what truly matters, even when things feel uncertain. Gratitude in Stoic philosophy is a practice of perspective. It doesn't erase life's difficulties, but it gives us a way to navigate them with greater clarity and calm. When we cultivate gratitude, we build a foundation of emotional resilience that helps us weather life's storms. And the more we practice it, the more we realize that even in the smallest moments, there's always something to be grateful for. Imagine looking at your life from a cosmic perspective. Picture yourself floating above the earth, seeing the vastness of the planet, the cities reduced to tiny specks, and the people moving like ants. From this vantage point, your problems, your worries, even your triumphs seem almost microscopic. This is the essence of the Stoic exercise known as the view from above, a powerful tool for gaining emotional distance and clarity. Marcus Aurelius, who often practiced this exercise, wrote, "You can rid yourself of many useless things among those that disturb you, for they lie entirely in your imagination." You will then at once gain space by comprehending the whole universe in your mind. Let's bring this down to earth with a relatable example. Imagine it's a stressful workday. Deadlines are looming, emails are piling up, and your boss just dropped a last-minute request on your desk. You feel the tension rising, your mind racing with frustration and anxiety. Now pause for a moment and apply the view from above. Picture yourself zooming out not just from your office, but from the city, the country, the planet itself. From this cosmic perspective, how significant is that email or deadline in the grand scheme of things? Does it really matter as much as it feels right now? Chances are the answer is no, and that realization can be incredibly freeing. This exercise isn't about dismissing your problems or pretending they don't matter. It's about gaining perspective. When you step back and see your life as part of a much larger whole, the things that once felt overwhelming suddenly seem more manageable. It's like looking at a storm from above. The clouds may be dark and swirling, but from a distance you can see the storm's edges, its boundaries, and even the sunlight waiting on the other side. Now take a moment to apply this to your own life. Think about something that's been weighing on you lately, a conflict, a mistake, or maybe an uncertain future. Close your eyes and visualize it from the view from above. What does it look like when you see it as just one small part of the vast, ever-changing universe? Does it feel as heavy as it did before? Chances are it won't. This strategy isn't about escaping reality, it's about reframing it. By stepping back and seeing the bigger picture, you're not diminishing your struggles, you're putting them in their proper context. And when you do, you'll find that you can face them with a little more calm, a little more clarity, and a lot more perspective. Because sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to see it from a different angle, one that reminds you of how small it truly is in the grand scheme of things. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means freedom. This is the core of the sixth Stoic strategy, emotional detachment. For the Stoics, detachment wasn't about shutting down or becoming cold and unfeeling. It was about creating space between yourself and your emotions so they no longer control your actions. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, put it perfectly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, but we become enslaved to our passions when we let them dictate our lives. Think about it this way: emotions are like waves in the ocean. They rise, they fall, and they can pull you under if you're not careful. Emotional detachment is learning to float above those waves, to observe them without being swept away. It's not about ignoring your feelings, it's about refusing to let them dominate you. Here's a modern example: social media drama. Imagine scrolling through your feed and stumbling across a heated argument or a post that feels like a personal attack. Your first instinct might be to react, to fire off a comment, defend yourself, or even spiral into frustration. But what if instead you paused and practiced detachment? You don't have to engage, you don't have to let someone else's words dictate your mood. By stepping back, you reclaim your power and your peace. Now take a moment to reflect. What are you overly attached to? Is it a relationship, a job, or maybe even an idea of how things should be? Why does it hold so much sway over you? Stoic detachment invites you to examine these attachments and ask yourself, are they serving you or are they holding you hostage? Emotional detachment isn't about giving up what matters to you, it's about freeing yourself from the grip of things that don't. When you detach, you gain clarity. You stop reacting impulsively and start responding intentionally. And in that space, you'll find something powerful: the freedom to choose how you live, unburdened by the weight of emotions that no longer control you. Do you believe everything you think? It's a question worth asking, because more often than not, our emotions are shaped by the stories we tell ourselves. This is where the seventh Stoic strategy comes into play, the discipline of assent. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most practical teachers, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And the key to that reaction lies in how we interpret our initial impressions, those split-second judgments that can either lead us astray or guide us toward clarity. Here's how it works. Every time something happens, we form an immediate impression of it. Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic and your first thought is, "They're so rude." Or a colleague gives you critical feedback and you immediately feel attacked. These impressions feel true in the moment, but here's the thing: they're not always accurate. The discipline of assent teaches us to pause before accepting these impressions as truth. Instead of reacting automatically, we take a step back and ask, is this really what's happening, or is my mind jumping to conclusions? Let's break it down with an example. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Your first impression might be, they don't respect me. But what if you paused and considered other possibilities? Maybe they were eager to share an idea, or perhaps they didn't realize they were interrupting. By questioning your initial impression, you create space for a more balanced perspective, one that might lead to a calmer, more thoughtful response. Now, think about a recent situation where you felt a strong emotional reaction. What was the story you told yourself in that moment? Was it based on fact, or was it an assumption? The discipline of assent invites us to examine these stories, to separate what's real from what's imagined. It's not about dismissing your emotions, it's about understanding where they come from and whether they're grounded in truth. This strategy isn't always easy. Our minds are wired to react quickly, and questioning our thoughts takes practice, but the payoff is immense. When you master the discipline of assent, you gain the ability to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than impulsiveness. You stop being a slave to your first impressions and start becoming the master of your mind. And that, as the Stoics knew, is where true freedom begins. Everything changes, even your emotions. This simple truth lies at the heart of the 8th Stoic strategy, embracing impermanence. The Stoics believed that understanding the transient nature of life could free us from unnecessary emotional burdens. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "All things fade and quickly turn to myth. Whether it's joy, sorrow, or anger, nothing lasts forever. And when we internalize this truth, we can begin to loosen our grip on the things that weigh us down." Think about the last time you held a grudge. Maybe someone said or did something that hurt you, and you carried that resentment for days, weeks, or even years. But here's the question: did holding onto it change anything? Did it make you feel better, or did it just keep the wound open? Embracing impermanence invites us to recognize that even our strongest emotions are temporary. The anger you felt yesterday doesn't have to define today. The pain you're carrying now doesn't have to shape your tomorrow. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're in a heated argument with a friend. Words are exchanged, and in the heat of the moment, it feels like the relationship might never recover. But fast forward a week, a month, or even a year. Does that argument still hold the same weight? Chances are it doesn't. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges. By embracing impermanence, you can choose to let go of the grudge before it takes root, freeing yourself from the emotional baggage that comes with holding on. Now take a moment to reflect. What are you holding onto that you could release? Is it a past mistake, a lingering resentment, or maybe even an outdated belief about yourself? The Stoic practice of impermanence isn't about dismissing your feelings. It's about recognizing their temporary nature and choosing not to let them define you. This strategy isn't just about letting go of the negative, it's also about savoring the positive. When you understand that nothing lasts forever, you learn to appreciate the present moment more deeply. That joyful moment with a loved one, that quiet morning with a cup of coffee, these are fleeting, and that's what makes them precious. Embracing impermanence is a practice of balance. It teaches us to hold life lightly, to cherish what we have while knowing it won't last, and to release what no longer serves us. When we do, we find a deeper sense of peace, unburdened by the weight of things we can't control, and free to fully embrace the beauty of the present. Holding on only weighs you down. Think about it. The tighter you grip, the heavier the load becomes. This is the essence of the 9th Stoic strategy, the art of letting go. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "We suffer more often in thought than in reality." His words remind us that much of our emotional weight comes from clinging to things we can't control, whether it's a future outcome, a past mistake, or even the opinions of others. Letting go isn't about giving up, it's about freeing yourself from the unnecessary burdens that keep you stuck. Imagine you're carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. Inside it are rocks labeled "what if," "should have," and "might happen." Each one represents a worry or regret you're holding onto. Now ask yourself, how many of those rocks are actually serving you? How many are just weighing you down? The Stoics teach us to unpack that bag, to let go of the stones that don't belong to us, and to walk forward with only what we truly need. Here's a practical example: anxiety about the future. Maybe you're worried about an upcoming job interview, a health concern, or even a global event that feels out of your hands. These worries can consume your thoughts, leaving you drained and distracted. But what if, instead of holding onto that anxiety, you practiced letting go? What if you reminded yourself that the future is uncertain and no amount of worrying will change that? When you release the need to control what's beyond your grasp, you create space for peace and clarity. Now take a moment to reflect. What's your rock? What's the one thing you're holding onto that's no longer serving you? Is it a grudge, a fear, or maybe even an expectation that's holding you back? The art of letting go invites you to identify it, acknowledge it, and then gently release it. You don't have to do it all at once, just start by loosening your grip. This strategy isn't about pretending everything is fine or ignoring your feelings. It's about recognizing that some things are simply beyond your control, and holding onto them only keeps you trapped. When you let go, you're not losing something, you're gaining freedom. Freedom to move forward, to breathe deeply, and to focus on what truly matters. And in that freedom, you'll find a sense of lightness that makes life's challenges easier to carry. Where is your mind right now? Is it here, in this moment, or is it racing ahead to tomorrow's to-do list or replaying yesterday's regrets? The Stoics believed that true peace and clarity come from living fully in the present, a concept we call practicing presence. Epictetus once said, "The past is gone, the future is uncertain, so all we truly have is this moment." And in that moment, he argued, lies the key to mastering our emotions and finding fulfillment. Let's break this down with a simple example. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend. They're sharing something important, but instead of truly listening, your mind is wandering. You're thinking about what you'll say next, or maybe you're distracted by your phone buzzing in your pocket. Sound familiar? In that moment, you're not just missing the chance to connect, you're also robbing yourself of the richness of the present. Practicing presence is about shifting your focus back to the here and now. It's about truly hearing your friend's words, noticing their expressions, and being fully engaged in the exchange. But this isn't just about conversations, it's about every moment of your day. Think about the last time you ate a meal. Did you savor each bite, or were you scrolling through your phone, barely noticing the flavors? The Stoics believed that by anchoring ourselves in the present, we not only deepen our experiences, but also reduce the emotional turbulence that comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. Here's a challenge for you. Take 5 minutes today to practice mindfulness. It doesn't have to be complicated. Sit quietly, focus on your breath, and gently bring your attention back whenever it wanders. Notice the sounds around you, the feel of the air on your skin, the rhythm of your heartbeat. This simple act of presence can be a powerful tool for calming your mind and grounding your emotions. Practicing presence isn't about perfection, it's about intention. It's about choosing again and again to come back to the moment, whether you're in a conversation, eating a meal, or simply sitting in silence. When you do, you'll find that the present moment holds more than enough to keep you anchored, focused, and at peace. And in that space, you'll discover a deeper connection, not just to the world around you, but to yourself. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. This is the essence of the 11th Stoic strategy, the power of silence. For the Stoics, silence wasn't just the absence of noise. It was a tool for gaining clarity, cultivating self-control, and mastering emotions. Marcus Aurelius, who often retreated into quiet reflection, wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." In other words, silence allows us to pause, to observe, and to respond with intention rather than react with impulse. Imagine you're in the middle of a heated argument. Emotions are running high, and every word feels like fuel to the fire. In that moment, the temptation to lash out, to defend yourself, or to prove your point can be overwhelming. But what if, instead of adding to the noise, you chose silence? What if you stepped back, took a deep breath, and allowed the tension to settle? This doesn't mean you're giving up or admitting defeat. It means you're taking control of the moment. Silence creates space. It gives you time to think, to process, and to decide how to move forward without being swept away by emotion. Here's a practical example. Let's say a coworker criticizes your work in front of others. Your instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself, or even to counterattack. But what happens when you stay silent instead? You disrupt the cycle of reactivity. You show that you're not easily shaken, and in that silence you regain your power. You're no longer playing by their rules, you're setting your own. Now think about your own life. When might silence serve you better than speaking? Maybe it's during a tense conversation when emotions are high and words could escalate the situation. Or perhaps it's in moments of doubt when you're unsure what to say and silence allows you to listen more deeply. Silence isn't about avoiding conflict, it's about choosing your battles wisely. The Stoics understood that silence is a form of strength. It's a way to step back from the chaos, to observe without judgment, and to respond with clarity and calm. So the next time you're faced with a situation that tempts you to react, consider the power of silence. Sometimes the most profound thing you can say is nothing at all. Resilience is built through adversity. It's a truth the Stoics understood deeply and one that remains just as relevant today. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most profound voices, said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." In other words, challenges aren't obstacles to avoid, their opportunities to grow, to adapt, and to become stronger. This is the heart of the 12th Stoic strategy, cultivating resilience. Think about the last time you faced a significant setback. Maybe it was a job loss, a failed project, or even a personal failure. In the moment, it probably felt overwhelming, even devastating. But here's the question: did that experience change you? Did it teach you something about yourself or the world that you might not have learned otherwise? For the Stoics, adversity isn't something to fear, it's a teacher. It shows us what we're made of and reveals strengths we didn't know we had. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you've been training for a marathon for months. You've put in the hours, the sweat, the early mornings, but on race day, something goes wrong. Maybe an injury flares up or the weather turns against you. You don't finish. At first, it feels like a crushing defeat, but over time, you start to see the lessons. Maybe you learn to listen to your body more carefully. Maybe you discover a deeper sense of perseverance, or perhaps you realize that failure isn't the end, it's just part of the process. Now, take a moment to reflect on your own life. What's a challenge you faced that, in hindsight, made you stronger? Maybe it was a difficult conversation that taught you how to communicate better, or a financial setback that forced you to reevaluate your priorities. Resilience isn't about bouncing back instantly, it's about finding meaning in the struggle, even when it's hard. This strategy isn't about pretending that hardships don't hurt or that failure doesn't sting. It's about shifting your perspective. When you see challenges as opportunities for growth, you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming an active participant in your own development. And that shift from feeling powerless to recognizing your own strength is where true resilience begins. So the next time you face adversity, remember, it's not the end of the road. It's a stepping stone, a chance to learn, to grow, and to emerge stronger than before. Because resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build one challenge at a time. What can you live without? It's a question that might make you pause, especially in a world where comfort and convenience are often just a click away. But for the Stoics, this question wasn't just hypothetical, it was a practice. This is the heart of the 13th strategy, the practice of self-denial. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, put it this way: "He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing." By voluntarily giving up comforts, even temporarily, we train ourselves to find contentment not in external things, but in our own resilience and inner strength. Let's break it down with an example. Imagine you decide to skip breakfast one day, not because you're in a rush or forgot, but as a deliberate choice. At first, you might feel the hunger pangs, the temptation to grab something quick. But as the hours pass, you start to notice something. You're okay. You're not just surviving, you're realizing that you can endure discomfort, and that realization is empowering. This isn't about punishing yourself, it's about proving to yourself that you're stronger than your cravings. Here's another example: cold showers. It might sound uncomfortable, and it is at first. but over time, stepping into that icy water becomes less about the discomfort and more about the discipline it builds. You're showing yourself that you can handle something difficult, that you don't need to always seek the easiest path. And in that moment, you're not just building physical resilience, you're strengthening your emotional fortitude. Now take a moment to reflect. What's one comfort you rely on daily? Maybe it's your morning coffee, your phone, or even the luxury of sleeping in. What would it feel like to give it up, even just for a day? The practice of self-denial invites you to experiment with this idea, not as a permanent sacrifice, but as a way to test your limits and discover what you're truly capable of. This strategy isn't about rejecting pleasure or living a life of hardship. It's about finding freedom in simplicity, in knowing that your happiness doesn't depend on external comforts. When you practice self-denial, you're not just saying no to something, you're saying yes to your own strength, your own resilience, and your ability to thrive, no matter the circumstances. And in that space, you'll find a deeper sense of control and confidence that no comfort can ever provide. Moderation is the key to emotional balance. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of the 14th Stoic strategy, the virtue of temperance. For the Stoics, temperance wasn't about deprivation or strict rules. It was about finding the middle path, the sweet spot between excess and deficiency. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: the soul becomes dyed with the color of its habits. Avoid extremes, for excess and deficiency alike destroy virtue. In other words, temperance is about cultivating habits that keep us steady, grounded, and in control. Let's take a modern example: screen time. Think about how much of your day is spent scrolling, clicking, and consuming digital content. It's easy to lose hours to the endless stream of notifications, videos, and updates. But what if, instead of letting your screen time spiral out of control, you set intentional limits? Maybe you decide to put your phone away during meals, or you designate an hour before bed as a tech-free zone. These small acts of moderation aren't just about reducing screen time, they're about reclaiming your focus, your time, and your peace of mind. Now consider this: where else in your life could you practice temperance? Maybe it's in how you approach food, exercise, or even your work schedule. Are there areas where you tend to overindulge or overcommit? Temperance invites you to step back and ask, what would balance look like here? How can I find a rhythm that sustains me without tipping into excess? This strategy isn't about perfection or rigid self-denial. It's about awareness and choice. When you practice temperance, you're not saying no to enjoyment. You're saying yes to a life that's more intentional, more sustainable, and more aligned with your values. You're creating space for what truly matters, free from the chaos of extremes. So, take a moment to reflect. What's one area of your life where you could embrace temperance today? It might be something small, like limiting your time on social media, or something bigger, like reevaluating your workload. Whatever it is, remember that moderation isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. Freedom to live with clarity, purpose, and emotional balance. And in that freedom, you'll find a deeper sense of control over your life and your emotions. Are your emotions steering the ship, or is your reason at the helm? This is the central question behind the 15th Stoic strategy, the role of reason. The Stoics believed that reason, not emotion, should guide our actions and decisions. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, put it this way: reason is the ruler and queen of all things. It must be our counselor and our guide. In other words, when we let reason take the lead, we make choices that align with our values and long-term goals rather than being swept away by fleeting feelings. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're in a heated argument with a loved one. Emotions are running high: anger, frustration, maybe even hurt. In that moment, it's easy to say something you'll later regret. But what if, instead of reacting impulsively, you paused and asked yourself, what's the rational response here? What would I say if I weren't feeling so upset? By stepping back and letting reason guide you, you're more likely to respond in a way that fosters understanding rather than escalating the conflict. Here's another scenario. Say you're faced with a tough decision at work, a choice between taking a risk on a new opportunity or playing it safe. Fear might push you toward caution, while excitement might pull you toward the risk. Both emotions are valid, but neither should have the final say. Instead, reason invites you to weigh the pros and cons, consider the potential outcomes, and make a decision based on logic rather than impulse. Now take a moment to reflect. What's a recent decision you made that was driven by emotion? How might it have turned out differently if reason had taken the lead? The Stoics teach us that while emotions are natural, they're not always reliable guides. Reason, on the other hand, helps us see clearly, even in the midst of chaos. This strategy isn't about dismissing your feelings or pretending they don't matter. It's about recognizing when emotions are clouding your judgment and choosing to respond with clarity instead. When you prioritize reason, you're not just reacting to life, you're thoughtfully shaping it. And in that space, you'll find a deeper sense of control, purpose, and alignment with who you truly are. Writing is a mirror for the soul. It's a way to step outside yourself, to observe your thoughts and emotions with a bit of distance, and to make sense of the chaos within. This is the essence of the 16th Stoic strategy, the practice of journaling. For the Stoics, journaling wasn't just a habit, it was a tool for self-reflection, emotional processing, and personal growth. Marcus Aurelius, whose private writings became the timeless meditations, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." His journals were a space to remind himself of this truth, to wrestle with his thoughts, and to return to what truly mattered. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you've had a difficult day. Maybe a project at work didn't go as planned, or a conversation with a friend left you feeling misunderstood. Instead of letting those emotions simmer, you sit down with a journal and begin to write. You describe what happened, how it made you feel, and what thoughts are swirling in your mind. As you write, something shifts. The act of putting your emotions into words helps you see them more clearly. You might even notice patterns, like how certain situations trigger the same reactions, and begin to understand why. Journaling isn't about solving the problem in that moment, it's about creating space to process it. Here's a practical way to start. Each evening, take just 5 minutes to reflect on your day. What went well, what didn't, what emotions came up, and why. You don't need to write a novel, just a few sentences can be enough to create clarity. Over time, this practice becomes a powerful habit, helping you track your progress, identify recurring challenges, and celebrate small victories. Now consider this. What would it feel like to have a dedicated space to unload your thoughts, free from judgment or interruption? Journaling offers exactly that. It's a safe place to be honest with yourself, to explore your fears and hopes, and to reconnect with your values. And the more you write, the more you'll notice how it helps you untangle the emotional knots that can otherwise leave you feeling stuck. The Stoics believed in the power of self-reflection, and journaling is one of the most accessible ways to practice it. By putting pen to paper, you're not just recording your day, you're engaging in a conversation with yourself. You're gaining clarity, building self-awareness, and finding a deeper sense of control over your inner world. So why not give it a try? Start small and see where the practice takes you. You might just find that writing becomes your greatest tool for emotional mastery. How often do you let pride dictate your emotions? It's a question that might make you pause, especially in a world that often encourages us to put ourselves first. For the Stoics, humility wasn't about thinking less of yourself, it was about thinking of yourself less. It was a way to quiet the ego, to reduce the emotional turbulence that comes from needing to be right to win or to be seen as superior. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." In other words, arrogance closes the door to growth while humility opens it wide. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you're working on a team project and someone points out a mistake in your work. Your first reaction might be defensiveness. Maybe you feel embarrassed or even angry. But what if, instead of letting pride take over, you paused and said, "You're right, I made a mistake and I'll fix it"? That simple act of humility doesn't just resolve the issue, it also strengthens trust and respect within the team. Humility isn't about admitting weakness, it's about acknowledging reality and choosing growth over ego. Here's another scenario. Think about a time when you were in a disagreement with someone you care about. Did pride keep you from apologizing or seeing their perspective? Humility invites us to step back, to consider that we might not have all the answers, and to prioritize the relationship over the need to be right. It's not about losing, it's about choosing connection over conflict. Now, take a moment to reflect, where in your life could humility make a difference? Maybe it's at work, where admitting you don't know something could lead to learning and collaboration. Or perhaps it's at home, where letting go of the need to control every decision could bring more peace to your relationships. Humility doesn't diminish you. It empowers you to grow, to connect, and to live with greater emotional freedom. The Stoics believed that humility was a form of strength, a way to free ourselves from the weight of ego and the emotional roller coaster that comes with it. When we practice humility, we're not just diffusing conflicts or building better relationships, we're creating space for greater self-awareness and inner peace. So the next time pride tries to take the wheel, ask yourself, what would humility do? The answer might just lead you to a calmer, more authentic way of living. Forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It might sound counterintuitive, but letting go of resentment isn't about excusing someone else's behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional burden of holding on to anger. The Stoics saw forgiveness as a form of liberation, a way to reclaim your peace of mind and move forward unburdened by the past. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, put it this way: "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." In other words, the longer we cling to resentment, the more we harm ourselves. Think about a time when someone wronged you. Maybe it was a betrayal, a harsh word, or even a broken promise. At first, the anger might feel justified, even necessary. But over time, that anger can start to weigh you down, consuming your thoughts and energy. Forgiveness, from a Stoic perspective, isn't about forgetting or pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's about choosing to release the grip that resentment has on you. Here's an example. Imagine a close friend cancels plans with you at the last minute, leaving you disappointed and frustrated. You could hold on to that frustration, letting it color your next interaction with them. Or you could choose to forgive them, not because their actions were okay, but because carrying that frustration only hurts you. By forgiving, you're not saying their behavior was acceptable. You're saying you refuse to let it control your emotional state. Now, take a moment to reflect. Is there someone in your life you need to forgive? Maybe it's a coworker who took credit for your idea, a family member who said something hurtful, or even yourself for a past mistake. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to reconcile or pretend everything is fine. It simply means you're choosing to let go of the emotional weight that's holding you back. The Stoic practice of forgiveness is about reclaiming your power. It's about recognizing that holding on to anger only keeps you tied to the past, while forgiveness opens the door to a freer, more peaceful future. So who do you need to forgive today? The answer might just be the key to unlocking a new level of emotional freedom. Are your actions aligned with your values? It's a question that cuts to the core of Stoic philosophy, and one that Marcus Aurelius often reflected on. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." This is the essence of the 19th Stoic strategy, the discipline of action. For the Stoics, virtuous action isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about ensuring that every step you take reflects your deepest principles, even when it's difficult or inconvenient. Let's break this down with a real-world example. Imagine you're at work and you notice a colleague taking credit for your idea during a meeting. Your first instinct might be to call them out to make sure everyone knows it was your work. But here's the question: would that reaction align with your values? If one of your core principles is integrity, how can you address the situation in a way that stays true to that value? Maybe it's by having a private conversation with your colleague, calmly expressing how their actions made you feel, and seeking a resolution that respects both of you. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's about choosing a response that reflects who you are and what you stand for. The discipline of action challenges us to think beyond the immediate moment. It's not just about what we do, but why we do it. Are we acting out of anger, fear, or pride, or are we acting from a place of wisdom, courage, and compassion? When we align our actions with our values, we create a sense of inner harmony that no external circumstance can disrupt. Now, take a moment to reflect. How do your actions reflect your values in everyday life? Think about a recent decision you made. Maybe it was how you handled a disagreement, how you spent your time, or even how you treated yourself. Were your choices in line with what you truly believe in? The discipline of action invites us to pause and ask this question regularly, not just in big moments, but in the small, seemingly insignificant ones too. This strategy isn't about perfection or rigid self-judgment. It's about intention. It's about striving to live in a way that feels authentic and true to who you are. When you practice the discipline of action, you're not just navigating life's challenges, you're shaping a life that's aligned with your deepest principles. And in that alignment, you'll find a sense of emotional balance and fulfillment that's far more powerful than any fleeting reaction. So, the next time you're faced with a tough decision, ask yourself, what would a virtuous action look like here? The answer might just lead you to a more meaningful, purpose-driven way of living. Patience is the antidote to frustration. It's a truth so simple, yet so difficult to live by. For the Stoics, patience wasn't just about waiting, it was about how we wait. It was about finding peace in the delays, the setbacks, and the moments when life doesn't go according to plan. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen." In other words, life unfolds in its own time, and impatience only robs us of the ability to appreciate the process. Let's bring this to life with a relatable scenario. Imagine you're standing in a long line at the grocery store. The person in front of you is fumbling with coupons, the cashier seems to be moving in slow motion, and your frustration starts to build. Your mind races with thoughts like, "Why is this taking so long?" Or, "I don't have time for this." But here's the question: does getting upset make the line move faster? Probably not. What if instead you used that time to take a few deep breaths, to observe your surroundings, or even to mentally prepare for the rest of your day? When you choose patience, you're not just enduring the wait, you're transforming it into an opportunity for calm and reflection. The Stoics believed that patience was a form of strength, a way to reclaim control over your emotional state. It's not about passively accepting delays or inconveniences. It's about actively choosing how you respond to them. By practicing patience, you're not just managing your emotions, you're mastering them. Now take a moment to reflect, where in your life could patience make a difference? Maybe it's in traffic when the slow driver in front of you tests your temper. Or perhaps it's at work when a project isn't progressing as quickly as you'd like. Whatever the situation, the next time you feel impatience creeping in, try this: pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that some things are simply beyond your control. Instead of fighting against the delay, use it as a chance to practice patience. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a skill, and like any skill, it grows stronger with practice. So today, challenge yourself to find one small way to exercise patience. It could be as simple as waiting an extra moment before responding to a text, or resisting the urge to check your phone during a quiet moment. Each act of patience, no matter how small, is a step toward greater emotional mastery. And in that space, you'll find a deeper sense of peace and resilience that no delay can disrupt. Resistance only amplifies pain. It's a truth the Stoics understood deeply, and one that can transform the way we experience life's challenges. Seneca, one of Stoicism's wisest voices, put it this way: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." In other words, it's not the event itself that causes us pain, it's our refusal to accept it. The more we push against what's happening, the more we magnify our own suffering. This is why the 21st Stoic strategy is the power of acceptance. Let's bring this to life with a simple example. Imagine you've been looking forward to a weekend getaway with friends for weeks. You've packed your bags, made plans, and cleared your schedule, but then at the last minute your friends cancel. Disappointment sets in, and maybe even frustration or anger. Your first instinct might be to resist the situation, to dwell on how unfair it is, to blame your friends, or to spiral into negative thoughts about all the things you'll miss out on. But here's the question: does resisting the situation change anything? Does it bring your plans back, or does it just make you feel worse? The Stoic practice of acceptance invites us to take a different approach. Instead of fighting against what's happened, we acknowledge it. We say, "This is what's happening and I can't change it." Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like the situation or pretend it doesn't hurt. It simply means you stop wasting energy on what you can't control. When you accept the reality of cancelled plans, you're free to pivot. Maybe you use the weekend to rest, to dive into a hobby, or to connect with someone else. Acceptance doesn't erase the disappointment, but it does give you the space to move forward. Now, take a moment to reflect. What's something in your life that you're resisting right now? Maybe it's a difficult relationship, a career setback, or even a personal flaw you're struggling to change. How might acceptance shift your perspective? When we stop fighting against reality, we open ourselves to new possibilities. We stop being prisoners of our own resistance and start becoming architects of our own peace. The power of acceptance isn't about giving up or resigning yourself to life's hardships. It's about choosing to meet reality with clarity and courage. When you stop resisting, you stop suffering, and in that space, you'll find a quiet strength that no circumstance can take away. So, what are you resisting today? And how might acceptance set you free? How can you extend kindness to others and yourself? It's a question that might feel simple on the surface, but its implications run deep, especially when we consider it through the lens of Stoicism. For the Stoics, compassion wasn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It was a deliberate practice, a way to cultivate emotional harmony and strengthen our connection to others. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." In other words, we're all part of the same interconnected web of humanity, and when we act with compassion, we're not just helping others, we're nurturing our own well-being too. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're in the middle of a disagreement with a coworker. Tensions are high and both of you are digging in your heels. In that moment, it's easy to see the other person as an obstacle, someone standing in the way of what you want. But what if, instead of focusing on the conflict, you took a step back and asked yourself, what might they be feeling right now? What's driving their behavior? Compassion doesn't mean you have to agree with them or abandon your own perspective. It simply means you're choosing to see them as a human being with their own struggles and fears. And when you do, something shifts. The conflict might not disappear, but it becomes easier to navigate because you're no longer seeing the other person as an adversary. Here's another angle: compassion for yourself. Think about a time when you made a mistake. Maybe you missed a deadline or said something you regretted. Did you respond with kindness, or did you berate yourself for falling short? The Stoics believed that self-compassion was just as important as compassion for others. After all, how can we extend understanding and patience to those around us if we can't offer the same to ourselves? Now, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life could use a little more compassion today? Maybe it's a friend who's going through a tough time, a stranger who seems overwhelmed, or even yourself as you navigate a challenge. Compassion isn't about grand gestures. It's about small, intentional acts of kindness, a listening ear, a gentle word, or even just a moment of understanding. The practice of compassion reminds us that we're all in this together. When we extend kindness, we're not just easing someone else's burden, we're creating a ripple effect that can transform our own emotional landscape. So, who will you choose to show compassion to today? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of connection and peace. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. This is the heart of the 23rd Stoic strategy, the virtue of courage. For the Stoics, courage wasn't about being fearless or invincible. It was about moving forward even when fear tries to hold you back. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, put it this way: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In other words, courage is less about the external challenge and more about the internal choice to face it head-on. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work and someone proposes an idea that you know is flawed. Speaking up might feel risky. What if your colleagues disagree or think less of you? Fear whispers in your ear, urging you to stay silent. But here's the question: what's at stake if you don't speak up? Maybe it's the success of the project, or even your own sense of integrity. Courage in this moment means choosing to voice your concerns, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Now, think about your own life. What's a fear you've been avoiding? Maybe it's having a difficult conversation with someone you care about, taking a leap in your career, or even admitting a mistake. Courage doesn't mean the fear disappears. It means you're willing to act in spite of it. This strategy isn't about recklessness or ignoring risks. It's about weighing the stakes and choosing to move forward because the alternative, staying stuck in fear, is worse. When you practice courage, you're not just overcoming obstacles, you're building a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. So, take a moment to reflect. What's one fear you've been putting off? What would it look like to face it, even if it feels uncomfortable? Remember, courage isn't about being fearless, it's about taking the first step, even when your knees are shaking. And in that step, you'll find a strength you never knew you had. What can you remove to find peace? It's a question that might feel counterintuitive in a world that often tells us more is better. But for the Stoics, simplicity wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was a path to emotional clarity. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In other words, true wealth isn't found in accumulation, it's found in contentment, and that contentment often begins with letting go. Think about your own life for a moment. How many things do you own, do, or think about that don't truly add value? Maybe it's a closet full of clothes you never wear, a calendar packed with commitments you don't enjoy, or even a mind cluttered with worries about things you can't control. The practice of simplicity invites us to strip away the excess, not to deprive ourselves, but to create space for what truly matters. Here's an example. Imagine your desk is covered in papers, sticky notes, and random gadgets. Every time you sit down to work, you feel overwhelmed before you even begin. Now picture clearing that desk. You file away the papers, toss the clutter, and leave only what you need for the task at hand. Suddenly, the space feels calm, focused, and ready for action. The same principle applies to your mind. When you declutter your thoughts, letting go of distractions, unnecessary worries, and mental noise, you create room for clarity and peace. Now take a moment to reflect. What's one area of your life that feels unnecessarily complicated? Maybe it's your schedule, your digital habits, or even your relationships. What could you remove to make space for more tranquility? The practice of simplicity isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Start small. Clear a drawer, cancel a commitment you no longer value, or set aside time each day to unplug and breathe. Simplicity in Stoic philosophy is a form of freedom. It's about choosing what nourishes you and letting go of what doesn't. When you embrace simplicity, you're not just tidying your surroundings, you're creating a life that feels lighter, more intentional, and deeply aligned with your values. So what will you let go of today? The answer might just lead you to a quieter, more peaceful way of living. Nature teaches us balance and resilience. It's a truth the Stoics held close, finding in the rhythms of the natural world a profound source of emotional strength and perspective. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, often reflected on this connection, writing, "Look closely at the natural world. See how it flourishes, endures, and adapts. Let it remind you of your own capacity to grow and thrive." For the Stoics, nature wasn't just a backdrop to life. It was a teacher offering lessons in patience, harmony, and the art of letting go. Think about the last time you stepped outside on a crisp morning, the air fresh and the sky stretching endlessly above you. Maybe you noticed the way a tree bends in the wind but doesn't break, or how a river flows steadily, carving its path without force. These moments aren't just beautiful, they're reminders of how life moves. Nature doesn't resist change, it adapts. It doesn't cling to what's no longer needed, it sheds and renews. When we observe this, we're reminded that we, too, can find balance in the face of chaos and resilience in moments of challenge. Let's take this to a practical level. Imagine you've had a stressful day, maybe work was overwhelming, or a personal conflict left you feeling drained. Instead of staying indoors, stewing in those emotions, you step outside for a walk. As you move through the space, you notice the way the sunlight filters through the leaves, the sound of birdsong, or the steady rhythm of your footsteps. These small details pull you out of your thoughts and into the present moment. The natural world, with its quiet constancy, has a way of grounding us, of reminding us that life is bigger than our immediate worries. This week, consider making time to connect with nature. It doesn't have to be a grand adventure. It could be as simple as sitting under a tree, walking through a park, or even tending to a plant in your home. As you do, let the lessons of nature sink in. Notice how it thrives without striving, how it endures without complaint. Let it inspire you to approach your own challenges with the same steadiness and grace. The Stoics saw nature as a mirror, reflecting back to us the principles we need to live well. When we spend time in its presence, we're not just escaping the noise of daily life, we're reconnecting with a deeper sense of balance and resilience. So step outside, breathe deeply, and let the natural world remind you of your own strength. Can you remain calm when everything around you seems to be falling apart? This is the challenge at the heart of the 26th Stoic strategy, the practice of equanimity. The Stoics believed that true strength lies in maintaining emotional stability, no matter what life throws at us. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most practical teachers, put it this way: It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Equanimity is the ability to stay centered, to resist being tossed about by external events, and to find peace even in the midst of chaos. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're at work and suddenly a major project you've been leading hits a snag. Deadlines are missed, clients are upset, and your team is scrambling to fix the problem. Panic sets in and the temptation to react impulsively is strong. But what if, instead of letting anxiety take over, you paused and reminded yourself, this is just a moment. I can handle this. Equanimity doesn't mean you ignore the problem or pretend it doesn't matter. It means you approach it with a clear mind, focusing on solutions rather than getting swept up in the storm of emotions. Here's another way to think about it. Equanimity is like being the eye of a hurricane. The winds may rage around you, but at the center, there's stillness. When you cultivate this inner calm, you're better equipped to navigate challenges without losing your footing. Now, take a moment to reflect. How do you typically respond to unexpected events? Do you feel overwhelmed, or do you find a way to stay grounded? The practice of equanimity invites us to train our minds to remain steady, even when the world feels unstable. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about choosing how to engage with them. This strategy isn't just about weathering storms, it's about thriving in them. When you practice equanimity, you're not just surviving chaos, you're mastering it. And in that mastery, you'll find a deeper sense of control and confidence that no external event can shake. So the next time life throws you a curveball, ask yourself, how can I respond with calm and clarity? The answer might just lead you to a quieter, more resilient way of living. Justice begins with how you treat yourself and others. It's a bold statement, but one that lies at the heart of the 27th Stoic strategy, the virtue of justice. For the Stoics, justice wasn't just about laws or societal norms. It was about fairness, integrity, and the way we choose to show up in the world. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." In other words, justice isn't just an abstract ideal. It's a daily practice rooted in how we interact with others and even how we treat ourselves. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you're at work and you notice a colleague being unfairly criticized or overlooked. Maybe they're being blamed for something that wasn't their fault, or their contributions are being ignored in a team meeting. Justice in this moment means speaking up, not because it's easy, but because it's right. It's about ensuring that fairness prevails, even when it requires courage or discomfort. When you stand up for someone, you're not just defending them. You're reinforcing the values of integrity and equality that create a healthier, more harmonious environment for everyone. But justice isn't just about how we treat others, it's also about how we treat ourselves. Think about the way you talk to yourself during a setback. Do you offer understanding and patience, or do you criticize harshly? The Stoics believed that self-compassion was a form of justice, a way to honor your own humanity and worth. When you extend fairness to yourself, you're better equipped to extend it to others. Now take a moment to reflect. How can you practice justice today? Maybe it's by advocating for someone who can't speak for themselves, or by giving yourself the same grace you'd offer a friend. Justice isn't about grand gestures, it's about small, intentional acts of fairness that ripple outward, creating a more balanced and compassionate world. The virtue of justice reminds us that every interaction is an opportunity to choose fairness over indifference, kindness over judgment, and integrity over convenience. So, the next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, what would justice do? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of emotional harmony and connection. Where is your attention right now? Is it here, fully present in this moment, or has it wandered off to yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's worries? For the Stoics, mindfulness wasn't just a buzzword, it was a vital tool for staying emotionally grounded. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." In other words, mindfulness is about bringing your full attention to the present, not just to get through the day, but to truly live it. Let's bring this to life with a practical example. Imagine you're sitting at your desk feeling overwhelmed by a looming deadline. Your mind is racing, your breathing is shallow, and stress is starting to take over. Now picture this. You pause for just a moment. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, and focus on the sensation of air filling your lungs and then gently leaving. You notice the rise and fall of your chest, the rhythm of your heartbeat, and the quiet stillness of the moment. This simple act of mindful breathing doesn't erase the deadline, but it does something equally powerful. It brings you back to the present, where you can think clearly and act intentionally. Mindfulness in Stoic practice is about more than just breathing exercises. It's about cultivating a habit of presence, of noticing where your attention goes and gently guiding it back when it strays. It's about finding calm in the chaos by anchoring yourself in the here and now. Here's a challenge for you. Take just 3 minutes today to practice mindfulness. It doesn't have to be complicated. Sit quietly, close your eyes if you'd like, and focus on your breath. If your mind starts to wander, and it will, that's okay. Just notice where it goes and bring it back to the present moment. This small act of mindfulness can be a powerful way to reset your emotional state, to ground yourself when life feels overwhelming. The Stoics knew that the present moment is all we truly have. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, and the only place we can act, think, or feel is right here, right now. When you practice mindfulness, you're not just calming your mind, you're reclaiming your power to live fully, one moment at a time. So, where is your attention right now? And what would it feel like to bring it back to the present? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of peace and clarity. Your perspective shapes your reality. It's a simple idea, but one that holds immense power, especially when it comes to managing our emotions. The Stoics understood this deeply, and they used perspective shifts as a key tool for emotional mastery. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most practical teachers, put it this way: people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. In other words, it's not the event itself that causes us pain or joy, it's how we choose to see it. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you've just been passed over for a promotion at work. Your first reaction might be disappointment, maybe even frustration or self-doubt. But what if, instead of seeing this as a failure, you reframed it as an opportunity? What if you used this moment to reflect on your skills, to identify areas for growth, or even to explore new paths that align more closely with your passions? When you shift your perspective, the setback doesn't disappear, but it loses its power to define you. Instead of feeling stuck, you feel empowered to move forward. This is the essence of the 29th Stoic strategy, the power of perspective. It's about recognizing that we have the ability to choose how we interpret the events in our lives. When we reframe challenges as opportunities, obstacles as lessons, or failures as stepping stones, we take control of our emotional responses. We stop being victims of circumstance and start becoming architects of our own reality. Now take a moment to reflect. What's a challenge you're facing right now? How are you currently seeing it? And how might you shift your perspective? Maybe it's a difficult relationship that's teaching you about patience, or a career setback that's pushing you to explore new possibilities. When you change the way you look at a situation, you change the way it affects you. The Stoics believed that perspective is a choice, one we can make in every moment. It's not about denying reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's about finding the meaning, the growth, and the opportunity in every experience. So, the next time you're faced with a challenge, ask yourself, how can I see this differently? The answer might just lead you to a more resilient, empowered way of living. How well do you know yourself? It's a question that might seem simple, but it's one of the most profound tools the Stoics used to master their emotions. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Assess yourself honestly, examine your thoughts, your actions, and your desires, for only through self-awareness can you find true freedom." This is the heart of the 30th Stoic strategy, the practice of self-examination. It's not just about looking inward, it's about understanding the patterns, triggers, and beliefs that shape your emotional world. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you've had a particularly challenging day. Maybe you snapped at a colleague, felt overwhelmed by a looming deadline, or found yourself stuck in a cycle of worry. Instead of brushing those moments aside, self-examination invites you to pause and ask, what was really happening there? What emotions were driving my reactions? Was it fear, frustration, or something deeper? By reflecting on these questions, you're not just replaying the day, you're uncovering the roots of your emotional responses. Here's how you can apply this. Tonight, before you go to bed, take just 5 minutes to reflect on your day. Think about the moments that stirred strong emotions, the highs and the lows. What triggered them? How did you respond? Were your actions aligned with your values, or did emotions take the wheel? This simple practice isn't about judging yourself, it's about learning. When you examine your day with curiosity and honesty, you start to see patterns. Maybe you notice that certain situations always leave you feeling defensive, or that you tend to avoid difficult conversations. These insights are gold. They're the first step toward mastering your emotions. Self-examination is like holding up a mirror to your inner world. It's not always comfortable, but it's always enlightening. When you take the time to truly know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers, you gain the power to choose how you respond, rather than being ruled by habit or impulse. So here's a challenge for you. Carve out a few minutes tonight for self-reflection. Grab a journal, sit quietly, and ask yourself, what did today teach me about myself? The answers might surprise you, and they'll definitely empower you to live with greater awareness and emotional mastery. Wisdom is the foundation of emotional mastery. Without it, we're left reacting impulsively, swept along by the currents of our emotions rather than steering our own course. The Stoics believed that wisdom, true understanding of life, ourselves, and the world, was the key to making better choices, even in the face of uncertainty or turmoil. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What kind of thoughts do you feed your mind? In other words, wisdom isn't just about knowing facts, it's about cultivating a mindset that guides us toward clarity and calm. Let's bring this to life with a practical example. Imagine you're at a crossroads in your career. You've been offered a new role that promises more money but also more stress. It's a tough decision, and your emotions are pulling you in different directions: excitement about the opportunity, fear of the unknown, and maybe even guilt about leaving your current team. In this moment, wisdom invites you to step back. Instead of letting your emotions decide, you seek advice from someone you trust, reflect on your long-term goals, and weigh the pros and cons with a clear mind. Wisdom doesn't guarantee the right answer, but it helps you approach the decision with intention rather than impulse. This is the heart of the 31st Stoic strategy, the virtue of wisdom. It's about more than just accumulating knowledge. It's about applying that knowledge to navigate life's challenges with grace and insight. Wisdom teaches us to pause before reacting, to question our assumptions, and to seek understanding even when emotions threaten to cloud our judgment. Now consider this: how can you cultivate wisdom in your own life? Perhaps it's by reading books that challenge your perspective, seeking out mentors who have walked the path before you, or simply taking time to reflect on your experiences. Wisdom grows when we're willing to learn not just from successes, but from failures too. Every challenge, every mistake, every moment of uncertainty is an opportunity to gain a little more insight into yourself and the world around you. The Stoics saw wisdom as a lifelong pursuit, a journey rather than a destination. It's not about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions and staying open to growth. So, the next time you're faced with a difficult decision or a surge of emotion, ask yourself, what would wisdom do? The answer might just lead you to a more thoughtful, intentional way of living. What does true contentment feel like? Is it the absence of desire or the presence of gratitude for what's already here? For the Stoics, contentment wasn't about having everything, it was about realizing that you already have enough. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, put it this way: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. In other words, contentment isn't found in external abundance, but in an internal shift, a recognition that what we truly need is often already within our grasp. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're sitting outside on a quiet evening, watching the sunset. The sky is painted with hues of orange and pink, and for a moment, everything feels still. You're not thinking about what you don't have or what you still need to do. You're simply there, present and at peace. That's contentment, a quiet joy that comes from appreciating the moment exactly as it is. Now think about your own life. What simple pleasures bring you that same sense of peace? Maybe it's the warmth of a morning cup of coffee, the sound of laughter with a loved one, or even the feeling of a good book in your hands. These moments, though small, hold immense power. They remind us that contentment isn't something we have to chase, it's something we can choose to notice, right here, right now. The practice of contentment invites us to shift our focus from what we lack to what we already possess. It's not about denying ambition or settling for less, it's about finding fulfillment in the present moment. When we learn to appreciate the little things, we begin to see that true wealth isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by how deeply we can savor what's already ours. So take a moment to reflect. What brings you contentment today? Is it a familiar routine, a cherished relationship, or even a quiet moment of solitude? The Stoics believed that contentment is a skill, one we can cultivate by training our minds to see abundance where we might otherwise see scarcity. And in that skill, we find a kind of freedom that no amount of striving can ever provide. Contentment isn't the end of the journey, it's the foundation. When we root ourselves in gratitude and presence, we create a sense of stability that carries us through life's ups and downs. So, what will you choose to appreciate today? The answer might just lead you to a deeper, more enduring kind of happiness. We are stronger together. It's a truth the Stoics understood deeply, and one that remains just as relevant today. For all their focus on self-mastery and inner strength, the Stoics also recognized the profound role community plays in our emotional well-being. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach." In other words, relationships aren't just a nice to have, they're a vital part of our growth and resilience. Think about the last time you faced a challenge. Maybe it was a personal loss, a professional setback, or even a moment of self-doubt. Who did you turn to? Chances are it was someone in your community, a friend, a family member, or even a colleague. The Stoics believed that leaning on others isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. When we allow ourselves to be supported, we're not just easing our burden, we're strengthening the bonds that help us weather life's storms. Here's a practical example. Imagine you've had a particularly rough day. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, discouraged, or just stuck. Instead of isolating yourself, you reach out to a trusted friend. You share what's on your mind, and in that moment of connection, something shifts. The weight feels a little lighter, the path forward a little clearer. This is the power of community. It reminds us that we're not alone, that our struggles are shared, and that there's strength in solidarity. The Stoics didn't see relationships as distractions from self-improvement. They saw them as essential to it. When we surround ourselves with people who uplift us, challenge us, and hold us accountable, we're not just building a support system, we're creating a foundation for emotional resilience. Now take a moment to reflect. Who in your community could use a little support today? Maybe it's a friend who's going through a tough time, a neighbor who could use a helping hand, or even a colleague who's feeling overworked. The role of community isn't just about receiving, it's about giving too. When we show up for others, we strengthen the very connections that sustain us. So here's a challenge. Reach out to someone in your community today. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture, just a simple message, a kind word, or even an offer to listen. Because when we come together, we don't just survive life's challenges, we thrive through them. And in that thriving, we find a deeper sense of connection and strength that no one can face alone. When was the last time you were truly still, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally? In a world that constantly demands our attention, stillness can feel like a rare luxury. Yet, for the Stoics, it was a vital practice, a way to quiet the noise of the mind and reconnect with what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once reflected, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own soul." Stillness, in this sense, isn't about avoiding life. It's about finding a sanctuary within yourself, a place where you can pause, reflect, and reset. Think about it. How often do you move through your day on autopilot, reacting to one task or demand after another? Stillness invites you to step off that treadmill, even if just for a moment. It's about creating space to breathe, to observe your thoughts without judgment, and to regain a sense of calm. Here's a simple way to practice it. Set aside 5 minutes today to sit quietly. Find a comfortable spot, close your eyes if you'd like, and focus on your breath. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the sensation of air moving in and out. When your mind starts to wander, and it will gently guide it back to your breath, this isn't about clearing your mind completely. It's about creating a moment of stillness, a pause in the chaos. Stillness might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to constant motion. But over time, it becomes a refuge, a way to ground yourself in the present moment. It's not about escaping life's challenges, it's about meeting them with a clearer, calmer mind. Now, take a moment to reflect. When can you carve out even a few minutes for stillness today? Maybe it's during your morning routine, on your lunch break, or before you go to bed. The practice of stillness doesn't require hours of meditation or a perfect environment. All it asks is that you slow down, even briefly, and give yourself the gift of quiet. In a world that never stops moving, stillness is an act of rebellion, a way to reclaim your inner peace and remind yourself that you don't have to be swept along by the current. So, why not try it today? Even 5 minutes of stillness can be enough to shift your perspective and bring you back to center. And in that space, you might just discover a deeper sense of calm and clarity that stays with you long after the moment has passed. Integrity is the foundation of emotional peace. It's a bold statement, but one the Stoics held as a guiding principle. For them, integrity wasn't just about honesty or morality, it was about alignment. It meant ensuring that every action, every decision, and every word reflected their deepest values. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, put it this way: "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, integrity begins with knowing who you are and then living in a way that honors that truth. Think about it. How often do we feel conflicted, torn between what we believe and what we do? Maybe it's staying silent when we should speak up, or going along with something that doesn't sit right with our conscience. These small misalignments might seem harmless, but over time they create a quiet storm of inner turmoil. Integrity, on the other hand, is about making choices that leave no room for regret. It's about standing firm in your values even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Here's an example. Imagine you're at work and a colleague suggests cutting corners on a project to meet a tight deadline. You know it's wrong, but speaking up might risk conflict or even jeopardize your standing. Integrity in this moment means choosing honesty over ease. It's about saying, I understand the pressure, but I can't compromise my values. The decision might feel difficult in the short term, but in the long run, it brings a deep sense of emotional peace because you've stayed true to yourself. Now take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could you practice greater integrity? Is there a situation where your actions don't quite align with your values? Maybe it's in your relationships, your work, or even the way you treat yourself. Integrity isn't about being perfect, it's about striving for consistency, even when it's hard. The virtue of integrity reminds us that emotional peace isn't found in avoiding challenges. It's found in meeting them with honesty and courage. When you live with integrity, you create a life that's not only aligned with your values but also free from the inner conflict that comes from compromise. So ask yourself, what would it look like to live with greater integrity today? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of calm and confidence in who you are. Change is inevitable, but how you respond to it is entirely within your control. This is the essence of the 36th Stoic strategy, the practice of adaptability. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most insightful voices, once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, but change is the only constant." The Stoics understood that life is unpredictable, and clinging to rigid plans or expectations only sets us up for frustration. Instead, they embraced adaptability as a way to navigate life's twists and turns with grace and resilience. Think about it. How do you typically handle change? Do you resist it, clinging to what's familiar, or do you find a way to roll with it? Let's bring this to life with a relatable scenario. Imagine you've planned a weekend getaway, a chance to unwind and recharge. But at the last minute, the weather turns stormy and your plans fall apart. Disappointment sets in and frustration bubbles up. This is where adaptability comes in. Instead of dwelling on what you've lost, you pivot. Maybe you turn your cancelled trip into a cozy day indoors, complete with hot tea, a good book, or even a movie marathon. By adjusting your expectations, you transform a potential setback into an opportunity for something unexpected and enjoyable. Adaptability isn't about giving up or settling. It's about finding new ways forward when the path shifts. It's about recognizing that while you can't control what happens, you can control how you respond. This mindset doesn't just help you navigate logistical changes, it also builds emotional resilience. When you practice adaptability, you're training yourself to stay calm and resourceful, no matter what life throws your way. Here's a small challenge for you today. Find one way to practice flexibility. Maybe it's adjusting your schedule to accommodate an unexpected request, or choosing to see a cancelled plan as a chance for spontaneity. Even something as simple as trying a new route to work or experimenting with a different recipe can help you build this skill. The more you practice adaptability, the more natural it becomes, and the better equipped you'll be to handle life's inevitable changes. The Stoics believed that adaptability wasn't just a survival skill, it was a path to emotional freedom. When you learn to flow with change rather than fight against it, you free yourself from the stress of unmet expectations. You open the door to new possibilities, new experiences, and ultimately a more peaceful way of living. So the next time life throws you a curveball, ask yourself, how can I adapt? The answer might just lead you to a more resilient, flexible, and fulfilling way of navigating the world. Small steps lead to big changes. It's a truth that might seem simple, but its impact can be transformative. The Stoics understood this deeply, emphasizing the power of incremental progress in mastering our emotions and building a life of resilience. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, even the smallest actions, when taken consistently, can help us overcome obstacles and create lasting change. Think about it. How often do we set big, ambitious goals only to feel overwhelmed before we even begin? Maybe you've told yourself, "I need to become more patient," or "I want to stop getting so angry." These are noble intentions, but without a clear, manageable path, they can feel impossible to achieve. This is where the power of small actions comes in. Instead of trying to overhaul your entire emotional landscape overnight, focus on one small, actionable step each day. Here's an example. Let's say you want to become more patient. Instead of expecting yourself to magically transform, start with something simple. Today, when you're stuck in traffic, try taking 3 deep breaths instead of honking your horn. Tomorrow, practice waiting an extra minute before responding to a frustrating email. These small actions might seem insignificant, but over time, they add up. Each moment of patience builds on the last, gradually reshaping your habits and your emotional responses. The Stoics believed that mastery begins with the smallest of choices. It's not about perfection or dramatic shifts, it's about consistency. By focusing on what you can do today, right now, you create a foundation for long-term growth. And the beauty of this approach is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need grand gestures or sweeping changes to start making progress. Now, take a moment to reflect. What's one small action you can take today to move closer to emotional mastery? Maybe it's pausing before reacting to a stressful situation, or taking 5 minutes to journal about your thoughts and feelings. Whatever it is, remember that even the smallest step forward is still progress. The power of small actions reminds us that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens one step at a time. And each step, no matter how small, brings you closer to the person you want to become. So, what will your first step be today? Can you focus on the effort, not the result? It's a question that challenges one of our most deeply ingrained habits, tying our happiness to outcomes. For the Stoics, detachment from results wasn't about apathy or giving up. It was about freeing ourselves from the emotional roller coaster of success and failure. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most practical teachers, put it this way: "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, desires, and actions. Outside our power are things like reputation, wealth, and outcomes." In other words, we can control how hard we work, how much we care, and how we show up, but we can't control how things ultimately turn out. Think about it. How often do we let the fear of failure or the pressure to succeed dictate our emotional state? Imagine you're working on a project that's incredibly important to you. Maybe it's a presentation at work, a creative endeavor, or even a personal goal like running a marathon. You pour your heart into it, giving it your best effort, but when the outcome doesn't match your expectations, you feel crushed. The Stoic practice of detachment invites you to shift your focus. Instead of fixating on the result, you concentrate on the process, on the effort, the learning, and the growth that comes from the journey itself. Here's a practical example. Let's say you're an artist preparing for an exhibition. You've spent months creating pieces that reflect your vision and passion. The day of the exhibition arrives, and while some people love your work, others don't seem to connect with it. If you're attached to the outcome, to the applause, the sales, or the praise, you might feel devastated. But if you've practiced detachment, you can appreciate the experience for what it was, an opportunity to share your art, to connect with others, and to grow as a creator. The outcome doesn't define you, your effort does. Now, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life are you overly attached to an outcome? Maybe it's a promotion you're hoping for, a relationship you're trying to fix, or even a personal goal you're striving to achieve. How might it feel to focus less on the result and more on the effort you're putting in? Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring or stop trying. It means you stop letting external results dictate your inner peace. The practice of detachment from outcomes is a powerful tool for emotional resilience. It teaches us to find fulfillment in the act of doing, not in the results that follow. When we detach, we free ourselves from the highs of success and the lows of failure, finding a steadier, more balanced way to navigate life. So, the next time you're working toward a goal, ask yourself, can I focus on the effort, not the result? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of freedom and peace. Generosity enriches the giver and the receiver. It's a truth that might seem counterintuitive at first. After all, isn't giving about sacrificing something of your own? But the Stoics saw it differently. For them, generosity wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a pathway to emotional fulfillment and a deeper connection to the world around us. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, captured this beautifully when he said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." In other words, generosity isn't just about what you give, it's about the ripple effect it creates, both within you and in the lives of others. Let's bring this to life with a simple example. Imagine you're at a coffee shop, and as you're waiting in line, you notice the person ahead of you struggling to count their change. Without hesitation, you step forward and offer to cover their drink. It's a small gesture, but in that moment, something shifts. The person smiles, relieved and grateful, and you feel a quiet warmth spread through you. That warmth isn't just about the money, it's about the connection you've created, the reminder that we're all in this together. The Stoics believed that generosity wasn't about grand, sweeping acts of charity. It was about the everyday choices to give what we can, whether that's time, attention, or even just a kind word. When we give freely, we're not just helping others, we're reminding ourselves of our capacity to make a difference. And in that reminder, we find a profound sense of purpose and joy. Now, think about your own life. What's one way you could practice generosity today? Maybe it's offering your seat to someone on the bus, sending a thoughtful message to a friend, or even just listening deeply when someone speaks. Generosity doesn't require wealth or resources, it only requires presence and intention. This practice isn't about earning praise or expecting something in return. It's about cultivating a mindset of abundance, of recognizing that even in moments of scarcity, we have something to give. And when we do, we're not just enriching the lives of others, we're enriching our own. So, who will you choose to be generous with today? The answer might just lead you to a deeper sense of connection and fulfillment. What have you learned today? It's a question that might seem simple, but its implications are profound, especially when we consider it through the lens of Stoicism. For the Stoics, reflection wasn't just a habit, it was a vital practice for processing emotions, gaining clarity, and fostering growth. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, put it this way: "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." But he didn't stop there. He also believed in ending each day with reflection, writing, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, examine them." Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine your day is winding down. You've navigated meetings, handled challenges, and maybe even celebrated a small win or two. Now, instead of rushing into the next task or scrolling through your phone, you take a moment to pause. You ask yourself, what went well today, what didn't? What emotions came up and why? This simple act of reflection isn't about dwelling on mistakes or patting yourself on the back. It's about learning. When you examine your day with curiosity and honesty, you start to see patterns. Maybe you notice that certain situations always leave you feeling stressed, or that you tend to overlook the small moments of joy. These insights become the building blocks of emotional mastery. Here's how you can make this practice your own. Tonight, before you go to bed, set aside just 5 minutes. Grab a journal or even a blank piece of paper and write down 3 things: 1 success, 1 challenge, and 1 lesson. Maybe your success was staying calm during a tough conversation. Your challenge was feeling overwhelmed by a busy schedule, and your lesson was realizing the importance of setting boundaries. This isn't about creating a long, detailed list. It's about capturing the essence of your day and distilling it into something meaningful. The Stoics believed that reflection wasn't just a tool for self-improvement. It was a way to reconnect with your values and purpose. When you take the time to reflect, you're not just reviewing your day, you're actively shaping the person you want to become. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything becomes clearer and you can move forward with greater intention. So here's a challenge for you. Tonight, make reflection a part of your routine. Ask yourself, what did I learn today? What can I carry forward into tomorrow? This small act of self-examination might just become your most powerful tool for growth, a quiet moment of clarity in a noisy world. And in that clarity, you'll find the strength to face whatever comes next. As we reach the end of this journey through the 40 Stoic strategies, it's worth pausing to reflect on the incredible power they hold, not just individually, but as a collective toolkit for mastering your emotions. From the dichotomy of control to the practice of contentment, each strategy offers a unique perspective, a practical tool, and a pathway to greater emotional resilience. Together, they form a roadmap for navigating life's challenges with clarity, calm, and purpose. Think about it, every strategy we've explored is like a thread in a tapestry. On its own, it might seem small, but when woven together, these threads create something strong, beautiful, and enduring. The Stoics didn't just teach us how to endure life's storms, they showed us how to thrive in them. They reminded us that while we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond, and in that simple truth lies immense freedom. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most profound voices, once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that they are difficult." This journey of self-improvement isn't about achieving perfection or erasing all struggles. It's about daring to take small, intentional steps toward becoming the best version of yourself. It's about choosing growth even when it's uncomfortable and finding strength in the process. Now, here's your challenge. Choose 1 strategy from these 40 to implement today. Maybe it's practicing gratitude, embracing impermanence, or simply taking a moment to reflect on your day. Start small, but start now, because the truth is, emotional mastery isn't a destination, it's a journey. And every step you take brings you closer to a life of greater peace, resilience, and fulfillment. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. Which strategy resonated most? What's 1 step you'll take today to begin mastering your emotions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every one. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more Stoic insights and practical tools to help you live a more intentional, empowered life. Remember, the power to master your emotions is within you. The Stoics gave us the tools, but it's up to you to pick them up and put them to use. So, what will your first step be? Let's take it